Hello, this is going to be my review of the AEE Lyfe Silver Action Camera, which we recently purchased on Amazon for a little over $30 in total. This is my 7th action camera, and I'm very happy to say, and very surprised to actually be saying this, that this is my favorite action camera. The most expensive one I purchased was the Campark X35 for around a little less than $90, between $80 and $90. But this one for $30 is actually my favorite, believe it or not, and I'm going to explain why. So this is my review of the AEE Lyfe Silver Action Camera. I have a few things that I'm going to talk about here, so I'm going to get started right now. The first thing is that battery life is pretty decent. The reviews of this camera are not great on Amazon, but I decided to buy it anyways because I was curious, because it has a setting that's 1080p 60 frames per second, which is my favorite video setting. Battery life I think is pretty decent. I mean, that's subjective, but once you charge it all the way, I think I was able to record for a decent amount of time, take some pictures, and the battery is there's still battery left. So that's, for me, wasn't a problem. 1080p 60 frames per second is my favorite video setting, and I'm just going to turn this on and show you that there are many different video settings. I looked at all of them, and just in my personal opinion, I think that the 1080p 60 frames per second video setting is my favorite. So we have this touch screen, again, believe it or not, $30 action camera. I'm going to be saying that a lot for a $30 action camera because it's context matters. I mean, if I paid $1,000 for this, I would obviously be disappointed, but for $30, very impressed. Okay, resolution settings. Another one of the things I'm going to say is you don't really need 4K 10 frames per second and 2.7K 15 frames per second. Why? Because they're not very smooth, as you're going to see in my video test. It doesn't really make sense to have these features if the video quality looks like this. It's just kind of choppy, it's not very smooth, right? We want at least 30 frames per second, but no. The best thing is 60 frames per second, so these just are not sufficient. They're not good enough. Okay, so it has a 1080p 60 frames per second video setting, 1080p 60 frames per second, but really I don't think you should use 10 frames per second. It just doesn't look very good. If you scroll down, that's my favorite setting, 1080p 60 frames per second. You also have 120 frames per second at 720p resolution, but it was kind of grainy in my opinion. So I will always go with this. If you're not really familiar with action cameras, this is a great setting to have. 1080p 60 frames per second, a combination of good quality and very smooth video. And for a $30 camera, to have 1080p 60 frames per second is good. But not only that, but I actually really like the quality itself. So you're going to see, if you don't want to hear me talk, if you don't want to listen to me, just skip to the next part of this video where we show you some video tests. Or you can look at the separate video that exclusively has lots and lots of sample footage recorded with this camera at different settings. If you want to just see, decide for yourself if you think this is good quality. I'm not going to tell you it's great. I'm just saying, in my opinion, I like this camera. I think it's good quality. That setting, but again, please, oops, sorry, touch screen. Please decide for yourself if you think this is good quality. So please feel free to watch the next few video clips, sample footage. Okay. So, just in my opinion, if you want to have the best video quality on this camera, if you want to really maximize video quality, first go to 1080p 60 frames per second. Now what you want to do is, the setting that you want to look at is viewing angle. So if you're familiar with the fisheye effect, the fisheye effect is basically like, it really shows a wide angle, but it kind of just, there's a little bit of a distortion there. So viewing angle, the default is going to be ultra wide. Ultra wide and wide is where you're going to have the fisheye effect. If you don't want like the fisheye effect, which is what I turned it off in most of the video samples that I recorded later in this video, you want to scroll down and click medium. Right? So let's go through that again. If you don't like the fisheye effect, which is enabled by default, viewing angle, that's ultra wide, scroll down and click medium. Right? See that little M? 1080p 60 frames per second M, that's medium. Medium viewing angle, then you won't have the fisheye effect. But for the best quality, to make it really as good quality as you can have, you would want the ultra wide viewing angle. So it's really a trade-off. I just don't have the fisheye effect on. I don't like it. But if you want to have the fisheye effect on, that's where you're going to have the best quality. Okay, so let's keep talking about this. Okay, I showed you how to turn off the fisheye effect. Okay, so the camera works best when it's very bright outside. So you're going to see this is very typical with these cheaper action cameras, is that low lighting is not always great. Low lighting is not always great quality. you want it to be sunny. Ideally, if it's especially with this camera, I just noticed. I mean, it's not really a big deal, but if it's kind of cloudy or if there's less light, the video quality might look a little bit more grainy and the colors are not as bright. So again, that's just typical with these cheap action cameras. You would rather have it be bright, but that's just a minor. I wouldn't even say it's a complaint. It's just you pay $30 for a camcorder like this. Really, I mean, it's not going to be perfect in low lighting. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about is there's two more things I want to talk about. So the first thing before I turn off this camera is we're going to talk about photos. If you're not really familiar with action cameras, a lot of them have a photo feature. And I really don't want you to be fooled by this. It's kind of deceptive. A lot of them will say like 20 megapixels, something like 20 megapixels, 16, 8, 10 megapixels. But really, I mean, you're not going to buy a camera for the picture quality, and this is really an afterthought. This feature, the photo feature, is really an afterthought on these cameras. It's not going to be great. But out of the 7 action cameras that I bought, this $30 action camera actually has the best photos. And it's not going to replace your smartphone camera or your standalone point-and-shoot camera. But you know what? For $30, this is actually fantastic photo quality. And there's a separate video that I took some photos, or at the end of this review, you can look at some photo samples. So while this is not really like an expensive, this is not going to replace your camera, the photo feature on this is pretty good for a $30 cheap action camera, I will say, because most action cameras, the cheap ones, they won't have good photos at all. This one actually has pretty good photos, so I have to say I'm very impressed with the photo feature. The last thing I'm going to talk about, let's just turn off the action camera right now, is accessories. Typically, it's my 7th action camera. Typically, an action camera you will have your underwater housing, right? Not going to absolutely 100% guarantee it's going to be waterproof, but it will shield it from the elements. Like if it's drizzling, if there's dust flying around, some dirt, it's definitely going to help, but I'm not going to guarantee it's going to be 100% waterproof with this on. So you got your underwater housing, that's an accessory. So I'm talking about accessories, okay? This is what I'm talking about, accessories. Okay, so you got your camera, you got your underwater housing. Let's just put that over there, okay? Now, I will say this is a small box. We don't really get that many accessories here, just a couple of standard mounts that you typically have. You have your USB cable, no extra battery, but just some standard accessories for mounting your camera on. But that's really it. I mean, a lot of these cameras will have tons of accessories. This one doesn't really have a lot of accessories, but you know what? It doesn't matter, because the most important thing for me is just video quality. And you know what? Even if it had tons of accessories but really bad video quality, I would say this is not a good purchase. But just for me personally, and I'm going to show you some video tests and photo tests after this, I really am a fan of this camera. This is my own personal opinion. At the beginning of the video, there was a screenshot showing you the camera on Amazon. I'm not recommending this. I'm not telling you to buy it. I'm not affiliated with this at all. This is the AEE Lyfe Silver Action Camera. All I'm saying is that I'm just, with my own experience with this camera, I was pleasantly surprised. I was very happy with the quality on the 1080p resolution video setting. I showed you how to turn off the fisheye effect if you want to. So if you're interested in this camera, please feel free to look around at other videos. I'm sure other people made some great videos. But really, this is all I have to say. I am very impressed with this camera that we purchased for only $30. I'm not guaranteeing that price. But wow, I was very, very, very surprised to see good photos, in my opinion, and good quality video at 1080p 60 frames per second, in my opinion. So this is the AEE Lyfe Silver Action Camera. This is my review. I'm very happy with this purchase. I had a great experience with this camera, even though one of the advertising points here is, as you can see, 4K 10 frames per second. I'm just going to say I don't think it's needed here because the video is not smooth at all, 10 frames per second. So this is my review of the AEE Lyfe Silver Action Camera. I'm very happy that I purchased this. Thanks for watching, and please feel free to go to the next clip if you'd like to see some video tests and photo tests. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day. Hello, this is another 1080p 60 frames per second video test with the AEE Lyfe Silver Action Camera that we recently purchased on Amazon for around $30. This is the AEE Lyfe Silver Action Camera 1080p video test, 60 frames per second. I would say overall, I'm very, very impressed with the quality of this video for a $30 camera. At least that's the price that we purchased it for. So I would just say that for $30, the price that we purchased it for, I think I'm very happy with this purchase, and I would make videos with this camera on vacation. That's how good I think the quality is. I would use this camera to record videos on vacation. So I think it's very impressive. A $30 camera making videos on vacation. I mean, I'm not planning on going on vacation anytime soon, but if I do go, I'll be sure to take this camera. This is a 1080p video test, 60 frames per second on this Sunday late afternoon, July 2021, with the AEE Lyfe silver action camera that we purchased for around $30. Again, I would say I'm very impressed with this video quality for the price that we paid, which is again $30. And yeah, it's always interesting to see that no matter how much you pay, there's really no guarantee that the quality is going to be very good on an action camera. But sometimes you can pay very little and still have a quality product. So just make sure you do your research. And thanks for watching this video. This is a 1080p 60 frames per second video test. Day is almost over. Sunday late afternoon with the AEE Lyfe silver action camera. It was cloudy today. I thought it was going to rain, but it's turning out to be a very nice day. Summer 2021 with this cheap action camera. 1080p video test, 60 frames per second. Hello, this is a 1080p video test at 60 frames per second. This is my favorite resolution setting. .1080p video test, 60 frames per second. I really like this camera at this particular setting. .1080p video test, 60 frames per second.
But let me position you guys.
.1080p video test, 60 frames per second. Hello, this is another 1080p 60 frames per second video test with the AEE Lyfe silver action camera. We purchased on Amazon for a little bit more than $30 in total. I'm not guaranteeing that you're going to pay that price. Anyways, so far I really like this action camera, not just for the video quality but also for the photo quality, which I was very impressed by considering the price that we bought it for. This is just a 1080p resolution video test at 60 frames per second with this cheap action camera, budget friendly. Don't know if they're still selling it on Amazon, but that's where we got it from. the AEE Lyfe silver action camera, which goes all the way to 4K resolution at 10 frames per second, but that's not very smooth. This is my favorite video setting, 1080p resolution at 60 frames per second, and I think this setting is very good on this cheap action camera, which is surprising to me because usually you have to pay at least $50 just to have the chance of having a good action camera with this kind of quality on with 1080p 60 frames per second. But here we have it. I'll let you decide for yourself if you think this is good quality with the AEE Lyfe silver action camera, 1080p 60. Hello, this is a 1080p 60 frames per second video test with the AEE Lyfe silver action camera, which we purchased on Amazon recently for around $30. I really like this action camera. I think for the price that we bought it for, which was a little over $30 in total, I'm not guaranteeing that you'll pay that price. Personally, I think this is a great action camera, especially on the 1080p 60 frames per second resolution setting, which is my favorite setting. I think it's a good combination of quality and smooth looking video. This is just a 1080p 60 frames per second video test to show you what this camera, show you how good the quality looks. Again, I leave it up to you to decide, but I personally really like this camera so far, and I'm really enjoying the experience of using this camera. And not only that, but not only with the video, but I also like the photo setting as well. Again, this is a 1080p 60 frames per second video test with the AEE Lyfe silver action camera. Hello, this is a 1080p video test 1080p video test at 60 frames per second with the AEE Lyfe silver action camera. We purchased this recently on Amazon for around $30. This is a 1080p 60 frames per second video test. So far I'm very impressed with the quality of this video. I mean the quality of this footage. It's seems to be a nice little camera for around $30. That's what we purchased it for. So far very impressed with the quality of this camera. 1080p video test at 60 frames per second with the AEE Lyfe silver action camera, which has many features both for recording video and lots of photo features as well. Hello, this is a 1080p 60 frames per second video test with the AEE Lyfe silver action camera that we recently purchased on Amazon for around $30. This is a video test, 1080p 60 frames per second, to see how well you can hear me right now, how good you think the audio quality is. The video quality is. It's totally up to you to decide if you think this is good quality or not. This is just a video test and audio test with this camera. I encourage you to do your research if you're thinking about this camera or other cameras. Just please look at sample footage at different resolution settings. So this is just a video test, 1080p 60 frames per second with the AEE Lyfe silver action camera that we purchased for around $30 on Amazon. .1080p video test, 60 frames.
Hello, this is a 1080p 60 frames per second video test with the AEE Lyfe Silver action camera. 1080p video test, 60 frames per second video test with the AEE Lyfe Silver action camera. Purchased for around $30 on Amazon. 1080p video test, 60 frames per second. Just to test to see how good the audio quality is, how well you can hear me right now. Again, this is the AEE Lyfe Silver action camera. This is just a 1080p video test, 60 frames per second with this cheap action cam that we purchased on Amazon for around $30. Hello, this is a 1080p video test, 60 frames per second with the AEE Lyfe Silver action camera. This is a relatively cheap action camera that we purchased on Amazon for around $30, and we're just making some videos to see how good the video quality is, how good the audio quality is with this cheap action camera. Again, this is a 1080p 60 frames per second video test. (1080p 60 frames per second video test with the AEE Lyfe Silver action camera that we purchased recently for around $30 on Amazon. So far, with the number of features on this $30 camera, I'm very impressed. This is the AEE Lyfe Silver action camera, 1080p video test at 60 frames per second. (1080p video test, 60 frames per second with the ultra-wide viewing angle, which creates the fisheye effect. 1080p 60 frames per second with the ultra-wide viewing angle, which creates the fisheye effect. I think this is good quality on this setting. I usually don't like the fisheye effect, so I change it to the medium viewing angle. Again, this is a 1080p 60 frames per second with the ultra-wide viewing angle on, which creates this fisheye effect. Hello, this is a 720p 120 frames per second video test with the AEE Lyfe Silver action camera that we purchased on Amazon for around $30. Again, this is a 720p video test, 120 frames per second with the AEE Lyfe Silver action camera. 720p video test, 120 frames per second. Hello, this is a 720p video test at 60 frames per second with the AEE Lyfe Silver Action Camera. 720p video test, 60 frames per second. .720p video test, 60 frames per second. Hello, this is a 4K video test at 10 frames per second. 4K video test, 10 frames per second with an AEE Lyfe Silver Action Camera. Only 10 frames per second, so the footage is not going to look very smooth, but again, this is the AEE Lyfe Silver Action Camera. 4K resolution video test, 10 frames per second. Hello, this is a 2.7K resolution video test, 15 frames per second with the AEE Lyfe Silver Action Camera. 2.7K video test, 15 frames per second. .7K video test, 15 frames per second.